Feeding at Sea, it's me Z. Hello everybody. I hope everybody's doing alright today. I am a little tired, so I decided to do this really last minute stream so that I could stay awake to see the Perseids. I noticed that some of you guys in the chat were saying that you guys are going to see the Perseids. Rain Blackwell, I think, mentioned. I need to stay up for I think several more hours so that I can catch the peak. So until then, we're going to have a nice cozy science fiction reading stream. Hello Penboo, hello Panzerfan, hello Terrified Games, hello Commander Phoenix, hello Sean, hello Rivet10, hello Nonconformist Psyche, hello Terrified Games. Yes, I've been having a good evening, but I'm honestly feeling really exhausted. I did a really long hike today and the temperature was just absurdly high. And when I got back, I was so tired. I probably should be taking a nap, but I feel like it's good to just read and be chill for a little bit. I think one really cool thing though is that about an hour ago I saw this SpaceX launch, which was super cool, but it was a little bit too bright, so I didn't really see much except for the trail of the rocket. But at least I got to see something, right? How are you guys doing this evening? I hope you guys have had a really epic day. I don't know if you've seen my Twitter, but I saw like 4 Tesla Cybertrucks in a row on the road. It was crazy to me. Yes, the Perseids are today. Well, they've actually been going on, I think, yesterday, and I think they're going to be going on for the next 2 days. But they're peaking today at whatever your local time is at 1 a.m. So I'll need a lot of energy to stay up for that. Yeah, so I've been having a really good day, so let's just read some really cool sci-fi. Oh yeah, no, I hope everybody has clear skies. Hoping that you guys can see a lot of Perseids. I think the maximum is about 75 per hour, which is a lot. That means you're averaging like more than 1 per minute. And that would be a really lucky scenario. I did notice it's getting cloudy a little bit where I'm at too, but hopefully it doesn't get too cloudy. Also, can you guys hear the music and the campfire sounds? I just set this up while you guys were waiting, but I don't know if it's too loud or not. I wanted to do something a little bit more cozy. It took me a lot of time. Yeah, the reason why the Perseids happen is because it's actually the trail. So Earth basically travels through a trail of a comet, and that debris travels through the Earth's atmosphere, and we see it as a really gorgeous meteor showers. Electric cars are not the future. Hydrogen fuel cells are the future. Yeah, honestly, where I'm at, there are Tesla cars basically everywhere, but I've also been seeing a lot of different types of electric cars. I've heard of really interesting fuel types too. I know somebody who's been working on using algae as fuel. I don't know how feasible that will be, but hopefully it'd be really cool to see some alternative energy types. Alright, well, I'm gonna just pull up some of my favorite short stories, so let me pull up the first one. So the first one is called The Egg. Okay. Is this big enough for you guys? I can make this maybe a little bit larger. I'll have to probably cut off chat a little bit, but here you go. This is actually one of my favorites because it's the kind of story where you read and then it gives you an existential crisis about who you are and where you're at and stuff like that. Oh yeah, it is in the second person, but I feel like usually I'm not really familiar with stories in the second person, but yeah. I first found this because Andy Weir is the guy who wrote The Martian, He also wrote Project Hail Mary, which is another great book that I highly recommend. Yep. Terrified Games, yep, you're right. This is the same guy who wrote The Martian. Not many people know about this short story, but it has to be one of my favorites. It's really well written. Rain Blackwell, best of luck! Hopefully you get to see a lot of meteors, and if you do, feel free to tag me on Twitter. I definitely want to see a lot of video clips of all the meteor showers that you guys get to see. Alright, well I think this is perfect timing. I'm gonna get a little bit of water. Stay hydrated, guys. Hydrate or dihydrate. Yeah, no, I'm waiting for the film as well. It's going to be super exciting. I think they're having some like really stacked actors in that cast too. I think Project Hail Mary to me was like a little bit more influential than The Martian, but I think this short story's up there too. All right, let's start reading. All right, The Egg by Andy Weir. All right. You were on your way home when you died. It was a car accident, nothing particularly remarkable, but fatal nonetheless. You left behind a wife and 2 children. It was a painless death. The EMTs tried their best to save you, but to no avail. Your body was so utterly shattered, you were better off, trust me. And that's when you met me. What happened, you asked? Where am I? You died, I said matter-of-factly, no point in mincing words. There was a truck and it was skidding. Yup, I said. I died? Yup, but don't feel bad about it. Everyone dies, I said. You looked around. There was nothingness, just you and me. What is this place, you asked? Is this the afterlife? More or less, I said. Are you God, you asked. Yup, I replied. I'm God. My kids and my wife, you said. What about them? Will they be all right? That's what I like to see, I said. You just died and your main concern is for your family. That's good stuff right there. You looked at me with fascination. To you, I didn't look like God. I just look like some man, or possibly a woman, some vague authority figure maybe, more of a grammar school teacher than the Almighty. Don't worry, I said. They'll be fine. Your kids will remember you as perfect in every way. They didn't have time to grow contempt for you. Your wife will cry on the outside, but will secretly be relieved. To be fair, your marriage was falling apart. If it's any consolation, she'll feel very guilty for feeling relieved. Oh, you said. So what happens now? Do I go to heaven or hell or something? Neither, I said. You'll be reincarnated. Ah, you said, so the Hindus are right. All religions are right in their own way, I said. Walk with me. You followed along as we strode through the void. Where are we going? Nowhere in particular, I said. It's just nice to walk while we talk. So what's the point then, you asked? When I get reborn, I'll just be a blank slate, right? A baby. So all my experiences and everything I did in this life won't matter. Not so, I said. You have within you all the knowledge and experiences of all your past lives. You just don't remember them right now. I stopped walking and took you by the shoulders. Your soul is more magnificent, beautiful, and gigantic than you could possibly imagine. A human mind can only contain a tiny fraction of what you are. It's like sticking your finger in a glass of water to see if it's hot or cold. You put a tiny part of yourself into the vessel, and when you bring it back out, you've gained all the experiences it had. You've been in a human for the last 48 years, so you haven't stretched out yet and felt the rest of your immense consciousness. If we hung out here for long enough, you'd start remembering everything, but there's no point in doing that in between each life. How many times have I reincarnated then? Oh, lots and lots, and in lots of different lives, I said. This time around, you'll be a Chinese peasant girl in 540 AD. Wait, what? You stammered. You're sending me back in time? Well, I guess technically. Time, as you know it, only exists in your universe. Things are different where I come from. Where you come from, you said. Oh, sure, I explained. I come from somewhere else, and there are others like me. I know you'll want to know what it's like there, but honestly, you wouldn't understand. Oh, you said, a little let down. But wait, if I get reincarnated to other places in time, I could have interacted with myself at some point. Sure, happens all the time. And with both lives only aware of their own lifespan, you don't even know it's happening. So what's the point of it all? Seriously, I asked. Seriously, you're asking me for the meaning of life? Isn't that a little stereotypical? Well, it's a reasonable question, you persisted. I looked you in the eye. The meaning of life, the reason I made this whole universe, is for you to mature. You mean mankind? You want us to mature? No, just you. I made this whole universe for you. With each life, you grow and mature and become a larger and larger intellect. Just me? What about everyone else? There is no one else, I said. In this universe, there's just you and me. You stared blankly at me. But all the people on Earth, all you, different incarnations of you. Wait, I'm everyone? Now you're getting it, I said, with a congratulatory slap on the back. I'm every human being who ever lived. Or who will ever live, yes. I'm Abraham Lincoln. And you're John Wilkes Booth, too, I added. I'm Hitler, you said, appalled. And you're the millions he killed. I'm Jesus? And you're everyone who followed him. You fell silent. Every time you victimize someone, I said, you are victimizing yourself. Every act of kindness you've done to yourself. Every happy and sad moment ever experienced by any human was or will be experienced by you. You thought for a long time. Why, you asked me, why do all this? Because someday you will become like me. Because that's what you are. You are one of my kind. You're my child. Whoa, you said incredulous. You mean I'm a god? No, not yet. You're a fetus. You're still growing. Once you've lived every human life throughout time, you will have grown enough to be born. So the whole universe, you said, it's just an egg, I answered. Now it's time for you to move on to your next life. And I sent you on your way. Yay! So that was The Egg by Andy Weir. It's a very short story, but I find it really interesting because I think there are a lot of ideas of like what happens to us after death, like reincarnation, like heaven, whatever. And this was particularly inspiring because it takes the idea of reincarnation and it says that it's applied to create a universe and that you yourself are who you interact with. I just think it's incredibly profound. Yes, Mind Force. Yeah, it's one of my favorite sci-fi short stories. Yep, it's only 4 pages, and in the span of just 4 pages, it goes through this idea of death, what happens after death, and then sort of what is our place in the universe. And in this short story, it says that our place in the universe is to mature. We are the egg, and we are maturing and becoming sort of all-knowing. Kurtisat made an animation about this story. Yes, I watched that video as well. That was a really well-made animation. I think it really took this to another... Oh... Mind Force just suggested The Jaunt. That is one of my favorite stories, but I was a little worried that it would be a little too scary for you guys. It will definitely keep me awake. Every time I read it, I can't. Do you guys want me to read that one as well? I've not read They're Made... Oh no, I have read They're Made of Me. Oh my god. Wow, Mind Force is really going to keep us awake. Panzerfan, my only problem with this is that the speed of causality makes yeah, no, of course, in physics this wouldn't be possible, but it's really crazy. Existential really? Are you guys up for that? Do you guys want to read that next? Mind Force, stop, you're bringing back my trauma. This is supposed to be cozy story time. Okay, guys. I'm tempted. I think we should read the jaunt then. Give me 1 second. I'll quickly find a PDF version of it. So, in the meantime, I will load up the loading screen. Alright, this one's a bit of a longer one. I hope you guys don't mind. It will help me stay awake, though, because it is one of the spookiest stories of all time. I do have to admit that this is definitely in my top 3 favorite sci-fi short stories, but I thought it would be a bit too scary. If you guys want, you know, the people have spoken, the Orbeez have spoken. So we can read through this. Let me quickly drink a little bit of water. I have quite a few short stories lined up, so there will definitely be no shortage. I don't know, maybe I should try like doing different voices to represent different characters. Cause here, I'll try experimenting with some of that. Yeah. All the Orbeez, make sure you stay very hydrated, and this will keep you guys awake to see the Perseids, for sure. Alright, let's get started. So this is The Jaunt by Stephen King. Let me try zooming into that a little bit. This is a little too big like that. There we go. Wait, this is The Jaunt by Stephen King. This is the last call for Jaunt 701. The pleasant female voice echoed through the blue concourse of New York's Port Authority Terminal. The pat had not changed much in the last 300 years or so. It was still gungy and a little frightening. The automated female voice was probably the most pleasant thing about it. "This is jaunt service to Whitehead City, Mars," the voice continued. "All ticketed passengers should now be in the blue concourse sleep lounge. Make sure your validation papers are in order. Thank you." The upstairs lounge was not at all grungy. It was wall-to-wall carpeted in oyster gray. The walls were an eggshell white and hung with pleasant, non-representational prints. A steady, soothing progression of colors met and swirled on the ceiling. There were 100 couches in the large room, neatly spaced in rows of 10. 5 jaunt attendants circulate, speaking in low, cheery voices and offering glasses of milk. At one side of the room was the entranceway, flanked by armed guards and another jaunt attendant who was checking the validation papers of a latecomer, a harried-looking businessman with the New York World Times folded under one arm. Directly opposite, the floor dropped away in a trough, about 5 feet wide and perhaps 10 feet long. It passed through a doorless opening and looked a bit like a child's slide. The Oates family lay side by side on 4 jaunt couches near the far end of the room. Mark Oates and his wife, Marilis, flanked the 2 children. "Daddy, will you tell me about the jaunt now?" Ricky asked. "You promised." "Yeah, Dad, you promised," Patricia added, and giggled shyly for no good reason. A businessman with a build like a bull glanced over at them and went back to the fodder papers he was examining as he lay on his back, his spit-shine shoes neatly together. From everywhere came the low murmur of conversation and the rustle of passengers settling down on the jaunt couches. Mark glanced over at Marilis Oates and winked. She winked back, but she was almost as nervous as Patty sounded. Why not, Mark thought. First jaunt for all 3 of them. He and Marilis had discussed the advantages and drawbacks of moving the whole family for the last 6 months, since he had gotten a notification from Texaco Water that he was being transferred to Whitehead City. Finally, they had decided that all of them would go for the 2 years Mark will be stationed on Mars. He wondered now, looking at Marilis's pale face, if she was regretting the decision. He glanced at his watch and saw it was still almost half an hour to jaunt time. That was enough time to tell the story, and he supposed it would take the kids' minds off their nervousness. Who knew, maybe it would even cool Marilis out a little. "All right," he said. Ricky and Pat were watching him seriously, his son 12, his daughter 9. He told himself again that Ricky would be deep in the swamp of puberty, and his daughter would likely be developing breasts by the time they got back to Earth, and again found it difficult to believe. The kids would be going to the tiny Whitehead combined school with the 100-odd engineering and oil company brats that were there. His son might well be going on a geology field trip to Phobos not so many months distant. It was difficult to believe, but true. Who knows, he thought wryly, maybe it will do something about my jaunt jumps too. So far as we know, he began. The jaunt was invented about 320 years ago, around the year 1987, by a fellow named Victor Carroon. He did it as part of a private research project that was funded by some government money. And eventually, the government took it over, of course. In the end, it came down to either the government or the oil companies. The reason we don't know the exact date is because Carroon was something of an eccentric. "You mean he was crazy, Dad?" Ricky asked. "Eccentric means a little bit crazy, dear," Marilis said, and smiled across the children at Mark. She looked a little less nervous now, he thought. Oh. Anyway, he'd been experimenting with the process for quite some time before he informed the government of what he had, Mark went on. And he only told them because he was running out of money and they weren't going to refund him. "Your money cheerfully refunded," Pat said, and giggled shrilly again. "That's right, honey," Mark said, and ruffled her hair gently. At the far end of the room, he saw a door slide noiselessly open, and 2 more attendants came out, dressed in the bright red jumpers of the jaunt service, pushing a rolling table. On it was a stainless steel nozzle attached to a rubber hose. Beneath the table skirts, tastefully hidden, Mark knew that there were 2 bottles of gas. In the net bag hooked to the side were 100 disposable masks. Mark went on talking, not wanting his people to see the representative of Leth, unless they had to. And if he was given enough time to tell the whole story, they would welcome the gas passers with open arms, considering the alternatives. "Of course you know that the jaunt is teleportation, no more, no less," he said. "Sometimes in college chemistry and physics they call it the Carroon process, but it's really teleportation, and it was Carroon himself, if you can believe the stories, who named it the jaunt. He was a science fiction reader, and there's a story by a man named Alfred Bester, The Star's My Destination's called, and this fellow made up the word jaunt for teleportation in it. Except in his book, you could jaunt just by thinking about it, and we can't really do that." The attendants were fixing a mask to the steel nozzle and handling it to an elderly woman at the far end of the room. She took it, inhaled once, and fell quiet and limp on her couch. Her shirt had pulled up a little, revealing one slack thigh road mouth with varicose veins. An attendant considerately readjusted for her, while the other pulled off the used mask and affixed a fresh one. It was a process that made Mark think of the plastic glasses in motel rooms. He wished to God that Patty would cool out a little bit. He had seen children who had to be held down, and sometimes they screamed as the rubber mask covered their faces. It was not an abnormal reaction in a child, he supposed, but it was nasty to watch, and he didn't want to see it happen to Patty. About Rick, he felt more confident. "I guess you could say the jaunt came along at the last possible moment," he resumed. He spoke towards Ricky, but reached across and took his daughter's hand. Her palm was cool and sweating lightly. The world was running out of oil, and most of what was left belonged to the Middle Eastern desert peoples, who were committed to using it as a political weapon. They had formed an oil cartel they called OPEC. "What's a cartel, Daddy?" Patty asked. "Well, a monopoly," Mark said. Like a club, honey, Marilys said, and you could only be in that club if you had lots of oil. Oh. I don't have time to sketch the whole mess in for you, Mark said. You'll study some of it in school, but it was a mess. Let's let it go at that. If you owned a car, you could drive it only 2 days a week, and gasoline cost 15 old bucks a gallon. Gosh, Ricky said, it only costs 4 cents or so a gallon now, doesn't it, Dad? That's crazy, actually. Mark smiled. That's why we're going where we're going, Rick. There's enough oil on Mars to last almost 8,000 years, and enough on Venus to last another 20,000, but oil isn't important anymore. Now what we need most of all is... water, Patty cried, and the businessman looked up from his papers and smiled at her for a moment. That's right, Mark said, because in the years between 1960 and 2030, we poisoned most of ours. The first water lift from the Martian ice caps was called Operation Straw. That was Ricky. Yes, 2045 or thereabouts. But long before that, the jaunt was being used to find sources of clean water here on Earth. And now water is our major Martian export. The oil's strictly a sideline, but it was important then. The kids nodded. The point is, those things were always there, but we were only able to get it because of the jaunt. When Karun invented his process, the world was slipping into a dark age. The winter before, or 10,000 people had frozen to death in the United States alone, because there wasn't enough energy to heat them. Oh yuck, Patty said matter-of-factly. Mark glanced to his right and saw the attendants talking to a timid-looking man, persuading him. At last he took the mask, seemed to fall dead on his couch seconds later. First timer, Mark thought. You can always tell. For Karun, it started with a pencil, some keys, a wristwatch, the some mice. The mice showed him there was a problem. Victor Karun came back to his laboratory in a stumbling fever of excitement. He thought he knew how Morse had felt, and Alexander Graham Bell and Edison, but this was bigger than all of them, and twice he had almost wrecked the truck on the way back from the pet shop in New Paltz, where he had spent his last $20 on 9 white mice. What he had left in the world was 93 cents in his right front pocket and the $18 in his saving account, but this did not occur to him. And if it had, it certainly would not have bothered him. The lab was in a renovated barn at the end of a mile-long dirt road off Route 26. It was making the turn onto this road, where he had just missed cracking up his brat pickup truck for the second time. The gas tank was almost empty, and there would be no more for 10 days to 2 weeks, but this didn't concern him either. His mind was in a delirious whirl. What had happened was not totally unexpected, no. One of the reasons the government had funded him, even to the paltry tune of $20,000 a year, was because the unrealized possibility had always been there in the field of particle transmission. But to have it happen like this, suddenly with no warning and powered by less electricity than was needed to run a color TV. God, Christ. He brought the brat to a screech halt in the dirt of the dooryard, grabbed the box on the dirty seat beside him by its grab handles. On the box were dogs and cats and hamsters and goldfish and the legend "I came from Stackpole's house of pets," and ran for the big double doors. From inside the box came the scurry and whisk of his test subjects. He tried to push one of the big doors open along its track, and when it wouldn't bulge, he remembered that he had locked it. Karun uttered a loud explanatory word and fumbled for his keys. The government commanded that the lab be locked at all times. It was one of the strings they put on their money, but Karun kept forgetting. He brought his keys out and for a moment simply stared at them, mesmerized, running the ball of his thumb over the notches in the brat's ignition key. He thought again, God, Christ. Then he scrabbled through the keys on the ring for the Yale key that unlocked the barn door. As the first telephone had been used inadvertently, Bell crying into it, "Watson, come here," when he spilled some acid on his papers and himself. So the first act of teleportation had occurred by accident. Victor Karun had teleported the first 2 fingers of his left hand across the 50-yard width of the barn. Karun had set up 2 portals at the opposite sides of the barn. On his end was a simple ion gun, available from any electronic supply warehouse for under $500. On the other hand, standing just beyond the far portal, both of them rectangular and the size of a paperback book, was a cloud chamber. Between them was what appeared to be an opaque shower curtain, except that the shower curtains were not made of lead. The idea was to shoot the ions through Portal 1 and then walk around and watch them streaming across the cloud chamber standing just behind Portal 2, with a lead shield between to prove they were really just being transmitted. Except that for the last 2 years, the process had only worked twice, and Karun didn't have the slightest idea why. As he was setting the ion gun in place, his fingers had slipped through the portal, ordinarily no problem, but this morning his hip had also brushed the toggle switch on the control panel at the left of the portal. He was not aware of what had happened. The machinery gave off only the lowest audible hum, until he felt a tingling sensation in his fingers. So that's chapter 1. Let me drink a little bit of water. I feel like I remember the last time I read this, there's a lot more like world building and scenery development, which I feel like I really enjoy. Oh, also, I'm so sorry for not checking the chat while I'm reading. Rain Blackwell, I hope things are going well with your Perseids journey. Yes, and Mindforce, we are reading sci-fi stories to get us to the Perseids. Yeah, no, I also would wish that gas was 4 cents, but I feel like I would not want to deal with a water crisis either. Alexander Babsky, iron gun for $500. I think it's interesting because there is a little bit of physics in this. Like, cloud chambers are used to see particle tracks, because as the particles pass through, they interact with the cloud chamber in different ways. So you can see like a particle splitting, for example, and you can see its like track literally splitting into 2. I highly recommend you look up any videos of cloud chambers, or if you can, try to see one in real life. I saw one once, and it was a huge cloud chamber. And it was really cool. I would look into it and you could see like, oh, this slide represents a muon or an electron or so forth. It was really profound. I really found it interesting. Oh, Terrified Games, thank you so much. I hope you guys are really enjoying this vibe. I know it's a little bit different from the more like, I feel like my other streams are more like energetic and a little bit crazy, but I wanted to do something a little bit more cozy. Ah, yes, they show radiation too. Yeah, if there's videos online of people who place like uranium blocks in cloud chambers, and you can literally see like the radiation coming off of it, emerging from the block. The origin of the train in the library. I'm not sure what the Library of Ruina is. You'll have to tell me more about that. Alright, a little bit more of water. Hope you guys stay hydrated. Alright, we're in for chapter 2. It was not like an electric shock, Karun wrote in his one and only article on the subject before the government shut him up. The article was published, of all places, in Popular Mechanics. I actually really like that magazine. He had sold it to them for $750 in a last-ditch effort to keep the jaunt a matter of private expertise. There was none of that unpleasant tingle that one gets if one grasps a frayed lamp cord, for instance. It was more like the sensation one gets if one puts one's hand on the casing of some small machine that is working very hard. The vibration is so fast and light that it is literally a tingling sensation. Then I looked down at the portal and saw that my index finger was gone on a diagonal slant through the middle knuckle, and my second finger was gone slightly above that. In addition, the nail portion of my third finger had disappeared. Karun had jerked his hand back instinctively, crying out. He so much expected to see blood, he wrote later, that he actually hallucinated blood for a moment or two. His elbow struck the iron gun and knocked it off the table. He stood there with his fingers in his mouth, verifying that they were still there and whole. The thought that he had been working too hard had crossed his mind. And then the other thought crossed his mind, the thought that the last set of modifications might have done something. He did not push his fingers back in. In fact, Karun only jaunted once more in his entire life. At first, he did nothing. He took a long, aimless walk around the barn, running his hands through his hair, wondering if he should call Carson in New Jersey or perhaps Buffington in Charlotte. Carson wouldn't accept a collect phone call. The chief, oh, not so very nice words, but Buffington probably would. Then an idea struck, and he ran across to Portal 2, thinking that if his fingers had actually crossed the barn, there might be some sign of it. There was not, of course. Portal 2 stood atop 3 stacked Pomona orange crates, looking like nothing so much as one of those toy guillotines missing the blade. On one side of its stainless steel frame was a plug-in jack, from which a cord ran back to the transmission terminal, which was a little more than a particle transformer hooked into a computer feed line. Which reminded him. Karun glanced at his watch and saw it was 11:15. His deal with the government consisted of short money plus computer time, which was infinitely valuable. His computer tie-in lasted until 3 o'clock this afternoon, and then it was goodbye until Monday. He had to get moving, had to do something. I glanced at the pile of crates again, Karun writes in his Popular Mechanics article. And then I looked at the pads of my fingers. And sure enough, the proof was there. It would not, I thought, then convince anyone but myself. But in the beginning, of course, it is only oneself that one has to convince. What was it, Dad? Ricky asked. Yeah, Patty added. What? Mark grinned a little. They were all hooked now, even Marilys. They had nearly forgotten where they were. From the corner of his eye, he could see the jaunt attendants whisper-wheeling their cart slowly among the jaunters, putting them to sleep. It was never as rapid a process in the civilian sector as it was in the military, he had discovered. Civilians got nervous and wanted to talk it over. The nozzle and the rubber mask were too reminiscent of hospital operating rooms, where the surgeon with his knives lurked somewhere behind the anesthesist with her selection of gases in stainless steel canisters. Sometimes there was panic, hysteria, and always there were a few who simply lost their nerve. Mark had observed 2 of these as he spoke to the children. 2 men who had simply arisen from their couches, walked across to the entryway with no fanfare at all, unpinned the validation papers that had been affixed to their lapels, turned them in, and exited without looking back. Jaunt attendants were under strict instructions not to argue with those who left. There were always standbys, sometimes as many as 40 or 50 of them, hoping against hope. As those who simply couldn't take it left, standbys were let in with their own validations pinned to their shirts. Karun found 2 splinters in his index finger, he told the children. He took them out and put them aside. One was lost, but you could see the other one in the Smithsonian Annex in Washington. It's in a hermetically sealed glass case near the moon's rocks the first space travelers brought back from the moon. Our moon, Dad, or one of Mars? Ricky asked. Ours, Mark said, smiling a little. Only one manned rocket flight has ever landed on Mars, Ricky. And that was a French expedition somewhere about 2030. Anyway, that's why there happens to be a plain old splinter from an orange crate in the Smithsonian Institution. Because it's the first object that we have actually jaunted across space. What happened then? Patty asked. Well, according to the story, Karun ran back to Portal 1 and stood there for a moment, heart-thudding, out of breath. Got to calm down, he told himself. Got to think about this. You can't maximize your time if you go off half-cocked. Deliberately disregarding the forefront of his mind, which was screaming at him to hurry up and do something, he dug his nail clippers out of his pocket and used the point of the file to dig the splinters out of his index finger. He dropped them into the white inner sleeve of a Hershey bar he had eaten while tinkering with the transformer and trying to widen its afferent capability. Not really sure what afferent even means. He had apparently succeeded in that beyond his wildest dreams. One rolled off the wrapper and was lost. The other ended up in the Smithsonian Institution, locked in a glass case that was cordoned off with thick velvet ropes and watched vigilantly and eternally by a computer-monitored, closed-circuit TV camera. The splinter extraction finished, Karun felt a little calmer. A pencil. That was as good as anything. He took one from beside the cupboard and the shelf above him, and ran it gently into Portal 1. It disappeared smoothly inch by inch, like something in an optical illusion or in a very good magician's trick. The pencil had said Eberhard Faber No. 2 on one of its sides, black letters stamped along white yellow-painted wood. When he had pushed the pencil in until all but Eber had disappeared, Karun walked around to the other side of Portal 1. He looked in. He saw the pencil in cut-off view as if a knife had chopped smoothly through it. Karun felt with his fingers where the rest of the pencil should have been. And of course, there was nothing. He ran across the barn to Portal 2, and there was a missing part of the pencil lying on the top crate, heart thumping so hard that it seemed to shake his entire chest. Karun grasped the sharpened point of his pencil and pulled it all the way through. He held it up, he looked at it. Suddenly he took it and wrote, "It works," on a piece of barn board. He wrote it so hard that the lead snapped on the last letter. Karun began to laugh shrilly in the empty barn, to laugh so hard that he startled the sleeping swallows into flight among the high rafters. "Works!" he shouted and ran back to Portal 1. He was waving his arms, the broken pencil knotted up in one fist. "Works, works, do you hear me, Carson, you prick? It works, and I did it." "Mark, watch what you say to the children," Marilis reproached him. Mark shrugged. "It's what he's supposed to have said." "Well, can't you do a little selective editing?" "Dad," Patty asked, "is that pencil in the museum too?" Oh my god. There's so much, like, curse words in here. "Does it bear," expletive word, in the woods?" Mark said, and then clapped one hand over his mouth. Both children giggled wildly, but that shrill note was gone from Patty's voice. Mark was glad to hear, and after a moment of trying to look serious, Marilis began to giggle too. The keys went through next. Karun simply tossed them through the portal. He was beginning to think on track again now, and it seemed to him that the first thing that needed finding out was if the process produced things on the other end exactly as they had been, or if they were in any way changed by the trip. He saw the keys go through and disappear. At exactly the same moment, he heard them jingle on the crate across the barn. He ran across, really only trotting now, and on the way, he paused to shove the lead shower curtain back on its track. He didn't need either it or the ion gun now, just as well since the ion gun was smashed beyond repair. He grabbed the keys, went to the lock. The government had forced to put him on the door and tried the Yale key. It worked perfectly. He tried the house key. It also worked. So did the keys which opened his file cabinets and the one which started the brat pickup. Alright, that's chapter 2. Gotta do a bit of a water break. How are you guys liking this story so far? I feel like it's really detailed. But I also like the ones where they really take the time to world build. Like thinking about like what it would be like for gas to be 4 cents. Or to actually discover something as amazing as teleportation. Oh yeah, no. Stephen King loves his curses. Yeah, this is actually sort of funny since I actually don't curse at all, so reading through this will definitely be an interesting obstacle. Yeah, Crypto, you're right. Yeah, there's a bit of a long story behind why I don't curse. It has to do with this bet that I made many, many years ago when I was in middle school, and now it sort of feels like there's a bit of sunk cost. As in, like, if I start cursing now, like, all this, like, progress that I've made for so many years would be lost. I also feel like I've sort of navigated life without cursing as well, which has been, I feel like, advantageous in some ways or another. Ah, Pembu, yes, a fellow non-cursor. It's actually crazy. I feel like we're few in between, you know? Far and few in between. Yeah, no, I feel like if I were to start cursing, I might not be able to stop, and that would be not very epic. Wonder what type of teleportation is Star Trek or Event Horizon? I know Star Trek really takes teleportation to an interesting level. I know that there was one episode where people would teleport and it would actually like duplicate the people by accident because like the teleportation machine was broken or something. I thought that was really interesting. If you like stuff like that, I highly recommend you watch The Prestige by Christopher Nolan. I won't spoil it, but the movie is basically about 2 competing magicians and how they would basically do anything to succeed. And there is a little bit of a feature by Nikola Tesla in the movie. Oh, Squad XCO, impossible not to curse as an Aussie. No. That's an uphill battle right there. Alright. Take another sip of water. Yeah, no. Oh, Rexus. That's really messed up. Kills the original, then reassembles them elsewhere. I think there was one episode where the teleportation machine was broken and it wasn't doing, like, the killing the original. It's kind of like the ship of Theseus, right? If you reassemble somebody else and they have the same memories as you, is it still you? Yeah. No, The Prestige is actually one of my favorite Christopher Nolan movies. I think when people think of Christopher Nolan, they think of, like, Inception and Interstellar, but I think The Prestige was one of those movies where I could not stop thinking about it after I watched it. Yeah, if you guys have any other movie recommendations, feel free to go ahead. I am a major Christopher Nolan fan, so I've watched, like, all of his movies. But if you guys have any other movies with, like, insane twists, I'm a huge fan of that as well. Oh, okay, I lied. I have not watched The Dark Knight. Oh, Memento? That was crazy. I feel like, Memento is like, I need to watch it again. I watched it once, and I don't think I got it, but I have to watch it again. Now, this might be a really hot take, but my favorite Christopher Nolan movie is actually Tenet. And, okay, the one thing that I don't like about it is that it is, like, really, like, you can't hear the audio because the music is so loud. But I watched Tenet at least, like, I think, like, 7 or 8 times. I think it's one of my most watched movies, along with Spirited Away from Studio Ghibli. But it's the kind of movie where you watch it and then you can watch clips of it and then you learn something new every single time. It's the most mind-breaking movie. Alright, gonna drink a little bit more water and then let's keep on reading. Nolan and audio balancing issues. Name a more iconic duo. You're so right. I have to admit that Tenet was a little loud. I think there's a YouTube video that's like why you can't hear anything in Tenet, and it like discusses that. Okay, let's keep on reading. We're on chapter 3. Karun pocketed the keys and took off his watch. It was a Seiko Quartz LC with a built-in calculator below the digital face, 24 tiny buttons that would allow him to do everything from addition to subtraction to square roots. A delicate piece of machinery, and just as important, a chronometer. Karun put it down in front of Portal 1 and pushed it through with a pencil. He ran across and grabbed it up. When he put it through, the watch had said 11:31:07. It now said 11:31:49. Very good, right on the money, only he should have had an assistant over there to peg the fact that there had been no time gain once and forever. Well, no matter. Soon enough, the government would have him waiting hip-deep in assistance. He tried the calculator. 2 and 2 still made 4. 8 divided by 4 was still 2. The square root of 11 was still 3.316647, and so on. That was when he decided it was mouse time. What happened to the mice, Dad? Ricky asked. Mark hesitated briefly. There would have to be some caution here if he didn't want to scare his children, not to mention his wife, into hysteria minutes away from their first jaunt. The major thing was to leave them with the knowledge that everything was all right now, that the problem had been licked. As I said, there was a slight problem. Yes, horror, lunacy, and death. How's that for a slight problem, kids? Karun set the box which read, I came from Stackpole's House of Pets down on the shelf and glanced at his watch. Curse word here, if he hadn't put the thing on upside down. He turned it around and saw that it was 1:45. He had only an hour and a quarter of computer time left. How the time flies when you're having fun, he thought, and giggled wildly. He opened the box, reached in, and pulled a squeaking white mouse by the tail. He put it down in front of Portal 1 and said, "Go on, mouse." The mouse promptly ran down the side of the orange crate on which the portal stood and scattered across the floor. Cursing, Karun chased it and managed to actually get one hand on it before it squirmed through a crack between two boards and was gone. "Insert explicative word here in uppercase," Karun screamed, and ran back to the box of mice. He was just in time to knock two potential escapees back in the box. He got a second mouse, holding this one around the body. He was by trade a physicist, and the ways of white mice were foreign to him, and slammed the lid of the box back down. This one he gave the old heave-ho. It clutched at Karun's palm, but to no avail. It went head over ratty little paws through Portal 1. Karun heard it immediately land on the crates across the barn. This time he sprinted, remembering how easily the first mouse had eluded him. He need not have worried. The white mouse merely crouched on the crate, its eyes dull, its sides aspirating weakly. Karun slowed down and approached it carefully. He was not a man used to fooling with mice, but you didn't have to be a 40-year veteran to see something was terribly wrong here. The mouse didn't feel so good after it went through, Mark Oates told his children, with a wide smile that was only noticeably false to his wife. Karun touched the mouse. It was like touching something inert, packed straw or sawdust perhaps, except for the aspirating sides. The mouse did not look around at Karun, it stared straight ahead. He had thrown in a squirming, very frisky and alive little animal. Here was something that seemed to be a living waxwork, likeness of a mouse. Then Karun snapped his fingers in front of the mouse's small pink eyes. It blinked and fell dead on its side. So Karun decided to try another mouse, Mark said. "What happened to the first mouse?" Ricky asked. Mark produced that wide smile again. "It was retired with full honors," he said. Karun found a paper bag and put the mouse into it. He would take it to Moscone the vet that evening. Moscone could dissect it and tell him if its inner works had been rearranged. The government would disapprove his bringing a private citizen into a project which would be classified triple-top secret as soon as they knew about it. Tough titty, as the kitty was reputed to have said to the babes who complained about the warmth of the milk. Karun was determined that the Great White Father in Washington would know about this as late in the game as possible. For all the scant help the Great White Father had given him, he would wait. Tough titty. Then he remembered that Moscone lived way back the hell and gone on the other side of New Paltz, and that there wasn't enough gas in the brat to get even halfway across the town, let alone back. But it was 2:03. He had less than an hour of computer time left. He would worry about the dissection later. Karun constructed a makeshift chute leading to the entrance of Portal 1. Really the first jaunt slide, Mark told the children, and Patty found the idea of a jaunt slide for mice deliciously funny, and dropped a fresh white mouse into it. He blocked the end with a large book, and after a few moments of aimless pattering and sniffling, the mouse went through the portal and disappeared. Karun ran back across the barn. The mouse was DOA. There was no blood, no bodily swellings to indicate that a radical change in pressure had ruptured something inside. Karun supposed that oxygen starvation might. He shook his head impatiently. It took the white mouse only nanoseconds to go through. His own watch had confirmed that time remained a constant in the process, or close to it. The second white mouse joined the first in the paper sack. Karun got a third out, a fourth if you counted the fortunate mouse that escaped through the crack, wondering for the first time which would end first, his computer time or his supply of mice. He held this one firmly around the body and forced its haunches through the portal. Across the room he saw the haunches reappear, just the haunches. The disembodied little feet were digging frantically at the rough wood of the crate. Karun pulled the mouse back. No catatonia here. It bit the webbing between his thumb and forefinger hard enough to bring blood. Karun dropped the mouse hurriedly back into the I Came From Stackpole's House of Pets box, and used a small bottle of hydrogen peroxide in his lab first aid kit to disinfect the bite. He put a band-aid over it, then rummaged around until he found a pair of heavy work gloves. He could feel the time running out. It was 2:11 now. He got another mouse out and pushed it through backwards, all the way. He hurried across the portal too. This mouse lived for almost 2 minutes. It even walked a little after a little fashion. It staggered across the Pomona orange crate, fell on its side, struggled weakly to its feet, and then only squatted there. Karun snapped his fingers near its head, and it lurched perhaps 4 steps further, before falling on its side again. The aspiration of its side slowed, and stopped. It was dead. Karun felt a chill. He went back, got another mouse, pushed it halfway through head first. He saw it reappear at the other end, just the head, then the neck and the chest. Cautiously, Karun relaxed his grip on the mouse's body, ready to grab it if it got frisky. It didn't. The mouse only stood there, half of it on one side of the barn, half on the other. Karun jogged back to Portal 2. The mouse was alive, but its pink eyes were glazed and dull. Its whiskers didn't move. Going around to the back of the portal, Karun saw an amazing sight. He had seen the pencil in the cutaway, so now he saw the mouse. He saw the vertebrae of its tiny spine ending abruptly in round white circles. He saw its blood moving through the vessels. He saw the tissue moving gently with the tide of life around its minuscule gullet. If nothing else, he thought, and wrote later in his Popular Mechanics article, it would make a wonderful diagnostic tool. Then he noticed that the tidal movement of the tissues had ceased. The mouse had died. That's chapter 3. I know. Really spooky, right? What's going on here? Kind of scary. Maybe I should include this, if I can, like... Here, let me include this little box so that people who are new know what we're reading. I know, this is getting a little ominous. Oh, I feel like I don't do well with horror stories. Neither with horror games. I know a lot of you Orbeez want me to play Soma, and unfortunately it is available on Mac. But I could never. I feel like that would actually traumatize me. I watched playthroughs of it during COVID when a lot of like VTubers were playing it, but I feel like that was just like, I feel like with a playthrough, you can pause, you can skip through, you can watch at 2 times speed, and so even if there are jump scares or something that's scary, you can like, it's not the full screen, so it doesn't feel like you're really in the story itself. But if you're playing a game, you are the character, and that's like a whole other level of scary. Now, I feel like I'm more into like the hard grind kind of games, like I've always wanted to get Factorio. But I heard there's aliens in Factorio. I wonder if you can get Factorio without the aliens. Just the building component. Which would be super fun. Yeah, no, horror games frustrate me, yeah. No, I feel the same. I've been really into this game called Superliminal during COVID. And, I'm blanking on who purchased the game for me. I think it was, someone with letter S. I'm so sorry. I'm really baked and I cannot remember. Oh, no. Oh, no, no, I'm really tired. Okay. For the record, I say the word baked as in, like, tired. Where I come from, that was where we would use that word. But I found out, actually, a little too recently, that after using this word for many, 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 many years, that baked actually means, like, after you've taken certain substances. So when I say baked, I mean that I'm tired. Yes, I am not on any of those. But yeah, I guess what I meant was, oh wait, Crypto, were you the one who got me the Superliminal? I think it may have been. But yes. Well, first off, thank you. And then second of all, yeah. Oh, yeah. Why did I think it was something with the letter S? As you can tell, if it wasn't for this stream, I would be sound asleep and would totally miss the Perseids. But yes, no, Crypto got this Superliminal game, which will be super epic. It is actually one of my favorite games, I just haven't had the chance to get it. And so when I come back, yeah, no, this is my last week. Very sad. When I come back, we will definitely do a long playthrough. I think we can do like 2 playthroughs of it. Like 2 videos to do a full playthrough. Hello, Galileo Alonsi Gallifrey. You know your name is so long that in my like chat box over there like doesn't even appear. That's so funny to me. Yeah. Have you heard of a game called A Slower Speed of Light? It was made at MIT and is about... Oh, I've not heard of that game. Here, let me jot that down. I will definitely check that out. Oh my god, Crypta. A slower speed. Yeah, just call you Galileo. Or Gal for short, yeah. Yeah, just call me Z for short. I was visiting another VTubers live stream, and they got it was the first time I was visiting their live stream, and they got really confused about how to pronounce my name, and so I was like, oh, it rhymes with Syzygy, like sizzle and then G, and then they were like, okay, Syzygy. I was like, okay, sure, that works. Honestly, I think I could play like a basic horror game. I wanted to play a buckshot roulette. Isn't that a bit of like probability theory as well? I feel like that would be really fun. I've also been seeing like a Markiplier play it, and it looks really funny, but he's really good at it. I don't think I would be really good at it. I will definitely check out A Slower Speed of Light. Alright. I think it's about time we resume the story time. What is a basic horror game? Oh, I felt like Soma is like the kind that it's like, it's such a deep story. It's such a, like the graphics are really crazy, a little too realistic. I feel like what Buckshot Roulette is a very simple situation, not that much lore. Like, not as many jump scares, I guess. That's why I could never play like FNAF, because the jump scares will absolutely get me. But I think FNAF lore is actually really interesting. Yeah, no Resident Evil Z anytime soon. If you guys have any game recommendations, please feel free to send them here. I like games that are more like puzzly. Oh, one game that might be interesting though is I do have 5-dimensional chess with multiverse time travel. We could definitely play it. I tried playing against the computer a few times, and I have to admit that I'm not the best. But I have beaten the computer a few times. I have like a hit or a miss record. Yeah, 5D chess is a classic. The lore does not have to go that hard for the robot. What? What kind of game is that? Lore does not have to go that hard for the The lore? The lore does not... Is that the name of a game? Or are you suggesting that there is a robot murder game without much lore? Ever heard of Adrift? I have not. Tetris? I actually am the type of person who didn't get into Tetris when I was little, but I feel like I would be really, really good at it. Do you know like on your phone you can get like different video games? I was really good at the one where you can like, it was called like Balls or something. I know it sounds like really weird, but you would basically like, you could adjust the angle of which you shoot these like spheres that would literally like bounce off of blocks, and you have to like try to get rid of all the blocks. I was really good at that. I think I played a game that was like, I spent like dozens of hours on it. 5D chess is a good horror game. It could be. Oh yeah, terrifying game, no worries. FNAF, yeah. Zuma? What's Zuma? You guys are culturing me more on these video games. I do have to admit that there is one game that I am really good at, and that is Subway Surfers. So you know on Subway Surfers there's like a leaderboard? I've been like #1 on that leaderboard a little too many times to count. It's like a weekly leaderboard, and I kid you not, there were times where I'd literally play like hours on end. Like one game for several hours, and I'd rack up like 3 million points, and I'd be on the top of the leaderboard. Big gamer, yep. I think I'm a very big gamer for that reason. Okay. Well, if you have any other game suggestions, feel free to send them into the chat. I'll definitely be down to do some more playthroughs when I'm back. But this week is Learn Maxing Week, which means that we will be learning. Though, I will have to... I think I'm planning to do some machine learning stuff this week, but I found out that the course that I was thinking about doing with you guys, I may not be able to stream the videos on it, or I'm gonna get like copy striked or something. I'm really new to all this, so I'm not really sure like what constitutes like fair use or getting copy striked, but I'm looking into it. But we will learn machine learning, I promise. Crypto, I do not expect Z to be playing games like Subway Surfers. I consider myself a professional Subway Surfers player, honestly. Oh yeah, no, I'm the type of person where like I like those videos where like half the screen is like Subway Surfers, and it really did distract. It's like you're watching something. No, not getting over. Oh no. Oh no. Getting over it is like a horror game. But it would be kind of funny. It would be kind of funny. Would I be able to finish it? Probably not. Well, I could try, you know. The only way is up. I always wanted to play There Is No Game. I thought that was like really funny too. Cutting sand videos on your side stream. Honestly, I would literally do a Subway Surfer stream. Subway Surfer stream. Subway Surfer stream. Let's go. I don't know if I can stream from my phone though. Fruit Ninja. I was never really into Fruit Ninja, but I feel like I can get into it. I'm actually recently getting into Plants vs. Zombies. I know, I feel like my brain is like stuck in 2010, but have we made games that are as good as Plants vs. Zombies? Oh, Balloons Tower Defense. Okay, we are definitely playing Balloons Tower Defense. That was my childhood. That was my childhood. I love Balloons Tower Defense. I also liked all like the Slitherio, like the IO games, like Agario. I was really good at Slitherio. I do that weird strat where you'd like wrap yourself around like a smaller like snake, and then you'd like slowly like go in and like destroy them. No, you're not old. I'm honestly just stuck in the 2010s era too. That was really a good time. Alright guys, let's keep on reading. It's chapter 4. I also got, oh, before I continue, I did also get one suggestion, to, consider doing, like, anime, scenes and, see, like, how accurate they are with physics, which I thought was a great suggestion. I definitely want to do that. Rexus, we should play some Flash games. Honestly, but they got rid of Flash, though. I was really into, the, Fire Boy and Water Girl game that's, like, on Cool Math Games. Oh, and Run! Run 2 and Run 3. I think those are still up. So many funny games to play. We should just do a Cool Math Games one. Because cool math games is obviously educational. Ah, Pembu, you'll have to teach me how to get Flash. Do you have a Mal? I'm so sorry, Squad Xio. I've actually not seen Steins Gate. But it is on my to-watch list. Actually, maybe I should watch it while I'm gone, while I'm traveling. On my anime list. I do not, but here, off the top of my head, I really like Made in Abyss. It is one of my favorite anime because the world building is great. It's also like a little spooky. It's like one of my favorites. I also really like Kaguya-sama Love is War. I feel like really reminded of Kaguya. Like I feel like I see like parts of me in Kaguya. What? What the Sigma? You guys will have to suggest all of these clips for me to review later on. Oh, yeah, no, I know Steins Gate is about time travel. I'll have to watch. Oh, yes, a members watch along would be nice. I am actually quite far away from opening membership. But one thing that am really hopeful about is I'm hoping we can hit 500 soon. We're actually really close. This goal thing on my stream is like not correct. But once we hit 500, I'm going to open a community space, aka a Discord. And it'll be super, super cool to just be able to chat with you guys. I also feel like when I return, I will also potentially be swamped with like schoolwork and stuff like that. So it'll be good to do like study togethers like in voice channels and stuff like that. And that would also be a great space for you guys to chat and send memes. Stop posting. Oh, what? 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 Where are these? What? I hope these aren't that bad Orbeez. I'm sorry. I know this is a cozy environment, but I think I'll have to send you guys to a detention. Or we'll have to do a suspension or an expulsion. Yeah. We're so close to hitting 500, so once that space opens up, I have been chatting with a few other VTubers, and they have been hanging out in the Discord for now, just making sure that everything is set up correctly. I think, I also I'm also, like, not very familiar with how Discord works, so if anybody's interested in, like, moderating or, like, checking to make sure that the Discord works properly, feel free to message me on Twitter. Anything high school, okay, I'll consider that. But hey, I mean, if I need to review physics, if I need to provide my scholarly advice, sometimes I gotta do what I gotta do. What do you study for, if I might ask? Mostly just physics. So I am getting a whiteboard, which will be super epic. I will write many equations on it. I usually do a lot of like physics studying, engineering studying. Actually most of my daily work is like coding, but I do like writing out equations and doing problems and stuff like that too. So that's sort of the type of work I'll be doing. And I hope I can, you know, do a study with me type stuff too. Alright guys, back to the story. We went on a little bit of a long tangent. But yeah, it's back to very cozy reading time. We were at a very ominous point of the story, so let's keep on going. Alright. Karun pulled the mouse out by the snout, not liking the feel of it, and dropped it into the paper sack with his companions. Enough with the white mice, he decided. The mice die. They die if you put them through all the way, and they die if you put them through halfway head first. Put them through halfway butt first, they stay frisky. What the hell is in there? Sensory input, he thought almost randomly. When they go through, they see something, hear something, touch something. God, maybe even they smell something that literally kills them. What? He had no idea, but he had to find out. Karun still had almost 40 minutes before Conlink pulled the database out from under him. He unscrewed the thermometer from the wall beside his kitchen door, trotted back to the barn with it, and put it through the portals. The thermometer went in at 83 degrees Fahrenheit. It came out at 83 degrees Fahrenheit. He rummaged the spare room where he kept a few toys to amuse his grandchildren with. Among them, he found a packet of balloons. He blew one up, tied it off, and batted it through the portal. It came out intact and unharmed. A start down the road towards answering his question about a sudden change in pressure somehow caused by what he was already thinking of as the jaunting process. With 5 minutes to go before the witching hour, he ran into the house, snatched up his goldfish bowl. Inside, Percy and Patrick switched their tails and darted about in agitation, and ran back with it. He shoved the goldfish bowl through Portal 1. He hurried across to Portal 2, where his goldfish bowl sat on the crate. Patrick was floating belly up. Percy swam slowly around near the bottom of the bowl, as if dazed. A moment later, he also floated belly up. Karun was reaching for the goldfish bowl when Percy gave a weak flick of his tail and resumed his lackadaisical swimming. Slowly, he seemed to throw off whatever the effect had been, and by the time Karun got back from Mosconi's veterinary clinic that night at 9 o'clock, Percy seemed as perky as ever. Patrick was dead. Karun fed Percy a double ration of fish food and gave Patrick a hero's burial in the garden. After the computer had cut him out for the day, Karun decided to hitch a ride over to Mosconi's. Accordingly, he was standing on the shoulder of Route 26 at 3:45 that afternoon, dressed in jeans and a loud plaid sport coat, his thumb out, a paper bag in his other hand. Finally, a kid driving a Chevette not much bigger than a sardine can pulled over, and Karun got in. "What you got in the bag, my man?" "Bunch of dead mice," Karun said. Eventually, another car stopped. When the farmer behind the wheel asked about the bag, Karun told him it was a couple of sandwiches. Mosconi dissected one of the mice on the spot, and agreed to dissect the others later and called Karun on the telephone with the results. The initial result was not very encouraging. So far as Mosconi could tell, the mouse he had opened up was perfectly healthy, except for the fact it was dead. Depressing. Victor Karun was eccentric, but he was no fool, Mark said. The jaunt attendants were getting close now, and he supposed he would have to hurry up, or he would be finishing this in the wake-up room in Whitehead City. Hitching a ride back home that night, and he had to walk most of the way, so the story goes, he realized that he had solved a third of the energy crisis at one single stroke. All the goods that had to go by train and truck and boat and plane before that day could be jaunted. You could write a letter to your friend in London or Rome or Senegal and could have it the very next day, without an ounce of oil needing to be burned. We take it for granted, but it was a big thing to Karun, believe me, and to everyone else as well. "But what happened to the mice, Daddy?" Rick asked. "That's what Karun kept asking himself," Mark said, because he also realized that if people could use the jaunt, that could solve almost all of the energy crisis, and that we might be able to conquer space. In his Popular Mechanics article, he said that even the stars could finally be ours, and the metaphor he used was crossing a shallow stream without getting your shoes wet. You just get a big rock, throw it into the stream, then get another rock, stand on the first rock, throw that into the stream, go back and get a third rock, go back to the second rock, throw the third rock into the stream, and keep up like that until you made a path of stepping stones all the way across the stream, or in this case the solar system, or maybe even the galaxy." "I don't get that at all," Patty said. "That's because you got turkey turds for brains." "Wow, Ricky is a savage," Ricky said smugly. "I do not, Daddy," Ricky said. "Children don't," Marilyn said gently. "Karun pretty much foresaw what has happened," Mark said. "Drone rocket ships programmed to land first on the moon, then on Mars, then on Venus, and then the outer moons of Jupiter. Drones really only programmed to do one thing after they landed, set up a jaunt station for astronauts," Ricky said. Mark nodded. "And now there are scientific outposts all over the solar system, and maybe someday long after we're gone there will even be another planet for us. There are jaunt ships on their way to 4 different star systems with solar systems of their own, but it'll be a long, long time before they get there." "I want to know what happened to the mice," Patty said impatiently. "Well, eventually the government got into it," Mark said. Karun kept them out as long as he could, but finally they got wind of it and landed on him with both feet. Karun was nominal head of the Jaunt project until he died 10 years later, but he was never really in charge of it again. "Geez, the poor guy," Rick said. "But he has got to be a hero," Patricia said. "He's in all the history books, just like President Lincoln and President Hart." "I'm sure that's a great comfort to him, wherever he is," Mark thought, and then went on, carefully glossing over the rough parts. The government, which had been pushed to the wall by the escalating energy crisis, did indeed come in with both feet. They wanted the jaunt on a paying basis as soon as possible, like yesterday, faced with economic chaos and the increasingly profitable picture of anarchy and mass starvation in the 1990s. Only last-ditch pleading made them put off announcement of the jaunt before an exhaustive spectrographic analysis of jaunted articles could be completed. When the analyses were complete and showed no changes in... Oh my god. Sorry, that was my phone just now. And showed no changes in the makeup of jaunted artifacts, the existence of the jaunt was announced with international hoopla. Showing intelligence for once, the US government put Young and Rubicam in charge of the PR. That was where the myth-making around Victor Carun, an elderly, rather peculiar man who showered perhaps twice a week, oh, that's nasty, and changed his clothes only when he thought of it, began. Young and Rubicam and the agencies which followed them turned Carun into a combination of Thomas Edison, Eli Whitney, Pecos Bill, and Flash Gordon. The blackly funny part of all of this was that Victor Carun might even then have been dead or insane. Art imitates life, they said, and Carun would have been familiar with the Robert Heinlein novel about the doubles who stand in for figures in the public eye. Victor Carun was a problem, a nagging problem that wouldn't go away. He was a loudmouth foot dragger, a holdover from the ecological 60s, a time when there was still enough energy floating around to allow foot dragging as a luxury. These, on the other hand, were the nasty 80s, with cold clouds befouling the sky and a long section of the California coastline expected to be uninhabitable for perhaps 60 years due to a nuclear excursion. Victor Carun remained a problem until about 1991, and then he became a rubber stamp, smiling, quiet, grandfatherly, a figure seen waving from podiums in news films. In 1993, 3 years before he officially died, he rode in the pace car at the Tournament of Roses parade. Puzzling and a little ominous. The results of the announcement of the jaunt of working teleportation on October 19, 1988, was a hammerstroke of worldwide excitement and economic upheaval. On the world money markets, the battered old American dollar suddenly skyrocketed through the roof. People who had bought gold at $806 an ounce suddenly found that a pound of gold would bring something less than $1,200. In the year between the announcement of the jaunt and the first working jaunt stations in New York and LA, the stock market climbed a little over 1,000 points. The price of oil dropped only 70 cents per barrel. But by 1994, with jaunt stations crisscrossing the US at the pressure points of 70 major cities, OPEC had ceased to exist and the price of oil began to tumble. By 1998, with stations in most free world cities and goods routinely jaunted between Tokyo and Paris, Paris and London, London, New York and Berlin, oil had dropped to $14 a barrel. By 2006, when people at last began to use the jaunt on a regular basis, the stock market had leveled off 5,000 points above its 1987 levels. Oil was selling for $6 a barrel, and the oil companies had begun to change their names. Texaco became Texaco Oil Water, and Mobil had become Mobil Hydro 2 Ox. By 2045, water prospecting became the big game, and oil had become what it had been in 1906, a toy. Wow. That's crazy to think about. To a point that, like, oil is so cheap and water becomes the primary resource that people need. I also feel like it's a little ominous what happened to Carun. It seemed like he was sort of immortalized as a celebrity, but maybe he didn't really reap all the benefits of finding this discovery. I think what's really interesting too is like, humanity right now is definitely not at a point where we are able to do teleportation. But if we were able to do something like this and set up these stations and wait for these stations to reach these distant star fields and then be able to access those star fields so easily, that's really interesting to me. 77 per barrel right now. I think they mentioned that, like, by the time we get to where Mark and their family is, it's 4 cents a barrel. Rain Blackwell. Oh no! Wait, at least you've got to see a couple of meteors. I'm glad you're able to see Saturn. That sounds epic. Yeah, no, I'm so unfortunate about the clouds. I hope that it's clear for me too. Do not mention oil. It's not permitted here. Do you want to alert the US? I mean, if we find teleportation and it's as easy as it is in this story, then this would be pretty crazy. Alright, let's keep on going. I'm actually really invested. I'm a little horrified, but let's keep on going. What about the mice, Daddy? Patty asked impatiently. What happened to the mice? Mark decided it might be okay now, and he drew the attention of his children to the jaunt attendants, who were passing gas out only 3 aisles from them. Rick only nodded, but Patty looked troubled, as a lady with a fashionably shaved and painted head took a whiff of the rubber mask and fell unconscious. Can't John when you're awake, can you, Dad? Ricky said. Mark nodded and smiled reassuringly at Patricia. Karun understood even before the government got into it, he said. How did the government get into it, Mark? Marilis asked. Mark smiled. Computer time, he said. The database, that was the only thing that Karun couldn't beg, borrow, or steal. The computer handled the actual particular transmission, billions of pieces of information. It's still in the computer, you know, that makes sure you don't come through with your head somewhere in the middle of your stomach. Marilis shuddered. Don't be frightened, he said. There's never been a screw-up like that, Mare. Never. There's always a first time, she muttered. Mark looked at Ricky. How did he know? He asked his son. How did Karun... Oh. I am frozen. Oh no. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. Sorry guys, I'm not sure what happened there. I'm glitching out. Oh yeah, no, I'm definitely frozen in terror. I'm a little shook already. Right, let's keep on going. Alright, okay. Okay. Mark looked at Ricky. How did he know? He asked his son. How did Karun know you had to be asleep, Rick? When he put the mice in backwards, Rick said slowly, they were all right. At least as long as he didn't put them all in. They were only, well, messed up when he put them in head first, right? Right, Mark said. The jaunt attendants were moving in now, wheeling their silent cart of oblivion. He wasn't going to have time to finish after all. Perhaps it was just as well. It didn't take many experiments to clarify what was happening, of course. The jaunt killed the entire trucking business, kids, but at least it took the pressure off the experimenters. Yes, foot dragging had become a luxury again, and the test had gone on for better than 20 years. Although Karun's first test with drugged mice had convinced him that unconscious animals were not subject to what was known forever as the organic effect, or more simply, the jaunt effect. He and Mosconi had drugged several mice, put them through Portal 1, retrieved them at the other side, and had waited anxiously for their test subjects to reawaken or to die. They had reawakened, and after a brief recovery period, they had taken up their mouse lives, eating, the curse word, playing, and another curse word, with no ill effects whatsoever. Those mice became the first of several generations which were studied with great interest. They showed no long-term ill effects. They did not die sooner. Their pups were not born with 2 heads or green fur, and neither did these pups show any long-term effects. When did they start with people? Dad Risk asked, although he had certainly read this in school. Tell that part. I want to know what happened to the mice, Patty said again. Although the jaunt attendants had now reached the head of their aisle, Mark Oates paused a moment to reflect. His daughter, who knew less, had nevertheless listened to her heart and asked the right question. Therefore, it was his son's question he chose to answer. The first human jaunters had not been astronauts or test pilots. They were convict volunteers who had not even been screened with any particular interest in their psychological stability. In fact, it was the view of the students now in charge. Karun was not one of them. He had become what is commonly called a titular head, that the freakier they were, the better. If a mental spaz could go through and come out all right, or at least no worse than he or she had been going in, then the process was probably safe for the executives, politicians, and fashion models of the world. Half a dozen of these volunteers were brought to Province, Vermont, a site which has since become every bit as famous as Kitty Hawk, North Carolina had once been, gassed and fed through the portals exactly 2 hand-miles apart, one by one. Mark told his children this because, of course, all 6 of the volunteers came back just fine, and feeling perky, thank you. He did not tell them about the purported 7th volunteer. A ruh-roh, this figure, who might have been real or a myth, or most likely a combination of the two, even had a name, Rudy Foggia. Foggia was supposed to have been a convicted murderer, sentenced to death in the state of Florida for the murders of 4 old people at a Sarasota bridge party. According to the Apocrypha? I don't even know how to say that word. The combined forces of the Central Intelligence Agency and the FBI have... FBI? Why did they spell it like that, not just the FBI? Had come to Foggia with a unique one-time take it or leave it, absolutely not to be repeated offer. Take the jaunt, wide awake. Come through okay, and we put your pardon, signed by Governor Thurgood, in your hand. Out you walk, free to follow the one true cross, or to off a few more old folks playing bridge in their yellow pants and white shoes. Come through dead or insane, tough titty, as the kitty was purported to have said. What do you say? Foggia, who understood that Florida was the one state that really meant business about the death penalty, and whose lawyer had told him that he was in all probability the next to ride Old Sparky, said okay. Enough scientists to fill a jury box, with 4 or 5 left over as alternates, were present on the great day in the summer of 2007. But if the Foggia story was true, and Mark Oates believed it probably was, he doubted if it had been any of the scientists who talked. More likely it had been one of the guards who had flown with Foggia from Rye Fort to Montpelier, and then escorted him from Montpelier to Province in an armored truck. If I come through this alive, Foggia is reported to have said, I want a chicken dinner before I blow this joint. He then stepped through Portal 1 and appeared at Portal 2 immediately. He came through alive, but Rudy Foggia was in no condition to eat his chicken dinner. In the space it took to jaunt across the 2 miles, pegged at a really small number of a second by computer, Foggia's hair had turned snow white. His face had not changed in any physical way. It was not lined or jolly or wasted, but it gave the impression of great, almost incredible age. Foggia shuffled out of the portal, his eyes bulging blankly, his mouth twitching, his hands splayed out in front of him. Presently he began to drool. The scientists who had gathered around drew away. Oh, thank you, Beans, for subscribing. Right at the climax here. The scientists who gathered around drew away from him, and no, Mark really doubted if any of them had talked. They knew about the rats, after all, and the guinea pigs, and the hamsters, any animal, in fact, with more brains than your average flatworms. They must have felt a bit like those German scientists who tried to impregnate... Oh, okay, that does not sound very epic. Okay, moving on. What happened? One of the scientists shouted, is reputed to have shouted. It was the only question Foggia had a chance to answer. It's eternity in there, he said, and dropped dead of what was diagnosed as a massive heart attack. The scientists foregathered there were left with his corpse, which was neatly taken care of by the CIA and the FBI, and that strange and awful dying declaration, it's eternity in there. Daddy, I want to know what happened to the mice, Patty repeated. The only reason she had the chance to ask again was because the man in the expensive suit and the eternal shine shoes had developed into something of a problem for the jaunt attendants. He didn't really want to take the gas and was disguising it with a lot of bluff, bully boy talk. The attendants were doing their job as well as they could, smiling, cajoling, persuading, but it had slowed them down. Mark sighed. He had opened the subject only as a way of distracting his children from the pre-jaunt festivities, it was true, but he had opened it, and now he supposed he would have to close it as truthfully as he could without alarming them or upsetting them. He would not tell them, for instance, about C.K. Summer book, The Politics of the Jaunt, which contained one section called The Jaunt Under the Rose, a compendium of the more believable rumors about the jaunt. The story of Rudy Foggia, he of the Bridge Club murders and the uneaten chicken dinner, was in there. There were also case histories of some other 30 or so volunteer scapegoats or madmen who had jaunted wide awake over the last 300 years. Most of them arrived at the other end dead. The rest were hopelessly insane. In some cases, the act of re-emerging had actually seemed to shock them to death. Summer sections of jaunt rumors and the Apocrypha contained other unsettling intelligence as well. The jaunt had apparently been used several times as a murder weapon. In the most famous and only documented case, which had occurred a mere 30 years ago, a jaunt researcher named Lester Michelson had tied up his wife with their daughter's plexiglass dream ropes and pushed her screaming through the jaunt portal at Silver City, Nevada. But before doing it, Michelson had pushed the nil button on his jaunt board, erasing each and every one of the hundreds of thousands of possible portals through which Mrs. Michelson might have emerged, anywhere from neighboring Reno to the experimental jaunt station on Io, one of the Jovian moons. So there was Mrs. Michelson jaunting forever somewhere out there in the ozone. Michelson's lawyer, after Michelson had been held sane and able to stand trial for what he had done, within the narrow limits of the law, had ciphered a novel defense. His client could not be tried for murder because no one could prove conclusively that Mrs. Michelson was dead. This had raised the terrible specter of the woman, discorporeal but somehow still sentient, screaming into limbo forever. Bro, that's some nightmare stuff. That is scary. You're literally stuck in there forever. Forever is like if you think about the longest period of time that you can think of, forever is like, oh my god, that's just horrific. That does not sound very epic. Okay, let's keep on going. Michelson was convicted and executed. In addition, Summer suggested the jaunt had been used by various tin pot dictators to get rid of political dissidents and political adversaries. Some thought that the Mafia had their own illegal jaunt stations tied into the central jaunt computer through their CIA connections. It was suggested that the Mafia used the jaunt's nil capability to get rid of bodies which, unlike that of the unfortunate Mrs. Michelson, were already dead. Seen in that light, the jaunt became the ultimate Jimmy Hoffa machine, ever so much better than the local gravel pit or quarry. All of this had led to Summer's conclusions and theories about the jaunt, and that of course led back to Patty's persistent question about the mice. Well, Mark said slowly as his wife signaled with her eyes for him to be careful. Even now no one really knows Patty, but all the experiments with animals, including the mice, seem to lead to the conclusion that while the jaunt is almost instantaneous physically, it takes a long, long time mentally. I don't get it, Patty said glumly. I knew I wouldn't. But Ricky was looking at his father thoughtfully. They went on thinking, he said, the test animals. And so would we if we didn't get knocked out. Yes, Mark said. That's what we believe now. Something was dawning in Ricky's eyes. Fright? Excitement? It isn't just teleportation, is it, Dad? It's some kind of time warp. It's eternity in there, Mark thought. In a way, he said. But that's a comic book phrase. It sounds good, but that doesn't really mean anything, Rick. It seems to revolve around the idea of consciousness, and the fact that consciousness doesn't particulate. It remains whole and constant. It also retains some screwy sense of time, but we don't know how pure consciousness would measure time, or even if that concept has any meaning to pure mind. We can't even conceive what pure mind might be. Mark felt silent, troubled by his son's eyes, which were suddenly so sharp and curious. He understands, but he doesn't understand, Mark thought. Your mind can be your best friend. It can keep you amused even when there's nothing to read, nothing to do. But it can turn on you when it's left with no input for so long. It can turn on you, which means that it turns on itself, savages itself, perhaps consumes itself in an unthinkable act of auto-cannibalism. How long in there, in terms of years? 0.0000067 seconds for the body to jaunt, but how long for the unparticulated consciousness? 100 years, 1,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000,000, how long alone with your thoughts in an endless field of white? And then when 1,000,000,000 eternities have passed, the crashing return of light and form and body. Who wouldn't go insane? Ricky, he began, but the jaunt attendants had arrived with their cart. Are you ready? One asked. Mark nodded. Daddy, I'm scared. Patty said in a thin voice. Will it hurt? No, honey, of course it won't hurt, Mark said, and his voice was calm enough, but his heart was beating a little fast. It always did, although this would be something like his 25th jaunt. I'll go first, and you'll see how easy it is. The jaunt attendant looked at him questioningly. Mark nodded and made a smile. The mask descended. Mark took it in his own hands and breathed deep of the dark. Oh my god. We're almost done with this story, but... Alright, let's finish this out. I'm, like, really scared. Okay. The first thing he became aware of was the hard black Martian sky as seen through the top of the dome which surrounded Whitehead City. It was night there, and the stars sprawled with a fiery brilliance undreamed of on Earth. The second thing he became aware of was some sort of disturbance in the recovery room. Mutters, then shouts, and a shrill scream. Oh dear, that's Marilys, he thought, and struggled up from his jaunt couch, fighting the waves of dizziness. There was another scream, and he saw jaunt attendants running towards their couches, their bright red jumpers flying around their knees. Marilyn staggered towards him, pointing. She screamed again and then collapsed on the floor, sending an unoccupied jaunt couch rolling slowly down the aisle with one weakly clutching hand. But Mark had already followed the direction of her pointing finger. He had seen. It hadn't been fright in Ricky's eyes. It had been excitement. He should have known because he knew Ricky. Ricky, who had fallen out of the highest crotch of the tree in their backyard in Shinagadi when he was only 7, who had broken his arm. And was lucky that that had been all he'd broken. Ricky, who dared to go faster and further on his slide board than any other kid in the neighborhood. Ricky, who was first to take any dare. Ricky and fear were not well acquainted, until now. Beside Ricky, his sister still mercifully slept. The thing that had been his son bounced and writhed on its jaunt couch. Ugh! A 12-year-old boy with a snow-white fall of hair and eyes which were incredibly ancient, the corneas gone a sickly yellow. Here was a creature older than time masquerading as a boy, and yet it bounced and writhed with some kind of horrid, obscene glee, and at its choked lunatic cackles, the jaunt attendants drew back in horror. Some of them fled, although they had been trained to cope with just such an unthinkable eventuality. The old young legs twitched and quivered. Claw hands beat and twisted and danced on the air. Abruptly they descended, and the thing that had been his son began to claw at its face. Longer than you think, Dad, it cackled. Longer than you think. Held my breath when they gave me the gas. Wanted to see. I saw. Longer than you think. Cackling and screeching, the thing on the jaunt couch suddenly clawed its own eyes out. Blood gouted. The recovery room was an aviary of screaming voices now. Longer than you think, Dad. I saw. Long John. Longer than you think. It said other things before the jaunt attendants were finally able to bear it away, rolling its couch swiftly away as it screamed and clawed at its eyes that had seen the unseeable forever and ever. It said other things, and then it began to scream, but Mark Oates didn't hear it because by then he was screaming himself. Oh, heck no. No. Bro. I did this stream so I could stay awake to see the Perseids, and now I'm too scared to go outside to see the Perseids. Oh, no, this is, oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. I need to do like square breathing after that. Oh my god. Yeah, well, I'll read a short one next, and then I'll probably take a break before I have to see the Perseids. Yeah, let's find a nice, peaceful story. I don't know what other stories I had in mind. I was looking at, Long rain. Oh, I was gonna read A Sound of Thunder, which was really good. I need to... Oh, no. A Library of Ruina? I'll write that down. What's Project? Oh, no, no more spooky stories. Oh. You Orbeez are putting me through it. Oh. Okay, let me read through all of the chat. The vtuber does stand for scope. Maybe like FBI. Oh, yeah, maybe like that. Shibe! Okay, I'm happy again. Whoever the username is named Shibe, hello. Hey, yo, that's adorable. I love Shibes. Yay! I love Shibes, the little plushies. I love Shibe plushies. I love little Shibes. When I went for my hike this morning, I saw a very perfectly sized, immaculate toasted Shibe. They look like toasted marshmallows. Oh yeah, no. I feel like Stephen King also... Yeah, no, there's a lot of cursing, some really weird references in here. And hello, Beans. Welcome. Welcome to being an orbital, or lovingly known as the Orbeez. Thank you so much for subscribing, and I hope you like this type of content. I'm actually usually a physics VTuber, but wanted to do a little bit of a cozy stream to prepare for the Perseids. Oh, really? Oh, yeah. Longer than you think has a double meaning. Longer than you would guess, but also longer in the forever than you possibly have thoughts to think. Oh! Yeah, no, I think they, like, mentioned that it was, like... They mentioned somewhere that it was, like, here, like, billion eternities would have passed the crashing return of light and form and body. Oh, no. Hate. That's a good one. Oh, I have no mouth when I was— No, guys, nothing spooky. Let's end with, like, a nice, calm story. The long rain. Oh, at the end, I'll give you guys some of my other recommendations that I was thinking about reading. But since this stream has been going on for quite some time now, I think it'll be good to sort of do a short one and then wrap things up, and maybe we can chat at the end. Let's see. I was thinking about doing a Sound of Thunder. This one's also pretty long too. Oh, this is actually my favorite of all time. It's super long. It's longer than the one we just read, but I'll include all of these in a comment later, so you guys can take a look. But this one's written by Ted Chiang, and it's really, really good. I know it, like, the title and the first few paragraphs might seem a little like, oh, is this like a religious type story? But it isn't. It's very, like, philosophical. It's also, like, the type of story that has a long impact on you. Oh, I was gonna read The Long Rain as well. Oh, we could read Kaleidoscope. This one's a little sad though. I have no mouth and I must scream. I'm jotting these all down. I am a little wary of AI. I don't think I'm like the type of person that's like horrified of AI, but yeah. Oh, it's a game on Steam too, really. Huh, that might be worth a playthrough as well. Whew. Oh guys, I don't have any water in my water bottle. I may quickly go and get water and come back, if you guys don't mind. Class, behave yourselves while I'm gone, and I shall be right back. I'm watching you, class. I'm ready to hand out those detentions if people are misbehaving. Alright, I'll be right back. Hello, I have returned. I hope class that you've behaved. Terrified games. No smiley faces allowed. No, I'm just joking. I'm the kind of kid who, like, during class, I would write, like, draw, like, Among Us. Like, you know, the Among Us character on, like, whiteboards. That's so me. Mind Force, there's a story I'm trying to... One-on-one? Combat with an alien to decide the end of a war? That sort of reminds me of, like, Ender's Game. It wasn't one-on-one combat, though. And it was definitely much different. Scatter! No. I feel like, Crypto, your profile picture also looks like you are very... You're saying, like, scatter in uppercase. Squad XEO, yes, thanks so much for coming. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you're going to go see the Perseids. Enemy Mine watch along. I don't know what that is. Let me jot that down as well. You guys are giving me such great suggestions. Alright, we're gonna read one last story, since I am very spooked right now after reading this one. Oh, an old sci-fi movie I see. Do you guys want to... I was thinking we could read The Kaleidoscope. I don't know how long this one is. I feel like it's, it looks... Maybe... Okay, maybe it is quite long. Okay, this one is also quite long. Actually, this one doesn't look that long. Let's end with this one. What do you guys think? I really like this one. I don't think it's my favorite, but I feel like the other ones that I wanted to share are definitely longer. We could read this, but this will also be super long as well. What do you guys think? Here, let me do a poll and I'll let you guys decide. Next story. Kaleidoscope. Looks shorter. What was it? A Sound of Thunder. More of my favorite. Alright, I started a poll, guys. Vote. I like all of these, so whatever it is, I'm down. All of the short stories here come from some kind of anthology. Oh, it depends. Ray Bradbury has written 2 anthologies that I can think of. The Martian Chronicles, which are very much like Mars related. Sorry, that's me moving my chair. Oh, sorry. Okay, I lost my train of thought. Crypta. Oh, well, honestly, both of these are kind of sad, but... Yeah, honestly, both of these are... I feel like in sci-fi, there's no such thing as a happy story. But I feel like A Sound of Thunder is, like, more my favorite. I think it's more profound to me. But, yeah. I'm sorry, Crypta. Maybe I should do another stream that's just, like, happy stories only. It's okay. Just spending time with you guys makes me happy. Oh, and then to continue with Rexus's question. Yeah, so there's Illustrated Man and Martian Chronicles from Ray Bradbury. But I think the best anthology of short stories that I've encountered is by Ted Chiang, C-H-I-A-N-G. He wrote Exhalation and Stories of My Life, Stories of Your Life, and others. Both of those are really good. Now, those short stories are actually quite long, probably too long for me to read on a stream. But if you want to get a dose of science fiction, then I highly recommend. Alright. Okay, I think we're gonna read The Sound of Thunder. And then we're gonna end on that. What do you guys think? And then by then, I will be able to probably go outside and see the Perseids. And I hope you guys will too. Okay. Whew, let's get ready. Okay. Sound of Thunder by Ray Bradbury. The sign on the wall seemed to quaver under a film of sliding warm water. Eccles felt his eyelids blink over his stare, and the sign burned in this momentary darkness. Time Safari Inc. Safaris to any year in the past. You name the animal, we take you there. You shoot it. Warm thalm, I love that word, gathered in Eccles' throat. He swallowed and pushed it down. The muscles around his mouth formed a smile as he put his hand slowly out upon the air, and in that hand waved a check for $10,000 to the man behind the desk. Does this safari guarantee I come back alive? We guarantee nothing, said the official. Upset the dinosaurs. He turned. This is Mr. Travis, your safari guide in the past. He'll tell you what and where to shoot. If he says no shooting, no shooting. If you disobey instructions, there's a stiff penalty of another $10,000, plus possible governmental action on your return. Eccles glanced across the vast office at a mass and tangle, a snaking and humming of wires and steel boxes, at an aurora that flickered now orange, now silver, now blue. There was a sound like a gigantic bonfire burning all of time, all the years and all the parchment calendars, all the hours piled high and set aflame. A touch of the hand and this burning wood on the instant beautifully reversed itself. Oh, sorry to interrupt, but I just realized that the text here is incorrect. Let me quickly fix it. Oop. Currently reading. So if anybody joins, they are able to figure out where we're at. Okay, let's keep on going. Eccles remembered the wording in the advertisements to the letter. Out of chars and ashes, out of dust and coals like golden salamanders, the old years, the green years might leap. Roses sweeten the air, white hair turn Irish black, wrinkles vanish, everything fly back to seed, flee death, rush down to their beginnings, suns rise in western skies and set in glorious easts, moons eat themselves opposite to the custom, all and everything cupping one another, like Chinese boxes, rabbits and hats, all and everything returning to the fresh death, the seed of death, the green death, to the time before the beginning. A touch of a hand might do it, the merest touch of a hand. Unbelievable, Eccles breathed the light of the machine on his thin face. A real time machine. He shook his head. Makes you think if the electron had gone badly yesterday, I might be here now running away from the results. Thank God Keith won. He'll make a fine president of the United States. Yes, said the man behind the desk. We're lucky. If Dusher had gotten in, we'd have the worst kind of dictatorship. There's an anti-everything man for you, a militarist, anti-Christ, anti-human, anti-intellectual. People called us up, joking but not joking. Said if Dusher became president, they wanted to go live in 1492. Of course, it's not our business to conduct escapes, but to form safaris. Anyways, Keith's president now. All you got to worry about is shooting my dinosaur. Eccles finished it for him. A Tyrannosaurus Rex, the tyrant lizard, the most incredible monster in history. Sign this release. Anything happens to you, we are not responsible. Those dinosaurs are hungry. Eccles flushed angrily, trying to scare me. Frankly, yes. We don't want anyone going who will panic at the first shot. 6 safari leaders were killed last year and a dozen hunters. We're here to give you the severest thrill a real hunter ever asked for. Traveling you back 60 million years to bag the biggest game in all of time. Your personal check's still there. Tear it up. Mr. Eccles looked at the check. His fingers twitched. Good luck, said the man behind the desk. Mr. Travis, he's all yours. They moved silently across the room, taking their guns with them, towards the machine, towards the silver metal and the roaring light. First a day, and then a night, and then a day, and then a night, and then it was day, night, a week, a month, a year, a decade, 80, 2055, 80, 2019, 1999, 1957, gone, the machine roared. They put on their oxygen helmets and tested the intercoms. Eccles swayed on the padded seat, his face pale, his jaw stiff. He felt a trembling in his arms, and he looked down and found his hands tight on the new rifle. There were 4 other men in the machine. Travis, the safari leader, his assistant Lesperance, and 2 other hunters, Billings and Craver. They sat looking at each other, and the years blazed around them. Can these guns get a dinosaur cold? Eccles felt his mouth say. If you hit them right, said Travis on the helmet radio. Some dinosaurs have 2 brains, one in the head, another far down the spinal column. Huh, is that true? Whoa. We stay away from those. That's stretching luck. Put your first 2 shots in the eyes if you can, blind them and go back into the brain. The machine howled. Time was a film run backward. Suns fled and 10 million moons fled after them. Think, said Eccles, every hunter that ever lived would envy us today. This makes Africa seem like Illinois. The machine slowed, its scream fell to a murmur. The machine stopped. The sun stopped in the sky. The fog that had enveloped the machine blew away, and they were in an old time. A very old time indeed. 3 hunters and 2 safari heads with their blue metal guns across their knees. Christ isn't born yet, said Travis. Moses has not gone to the mountains to talk with God. The pyramids are still in the earth, waiting to be cut out and put up. Remember that Alexander, Caesar, Napoleon, Hitler, none of them exists. The man nodded. That, Mr. Travis pointed, is the jungle of 60,002,055 years before President Keith. He indicated a metal path that struck off into green wilderness, over streaming swamp, among giant ferns and palms. And that, he said, is the path, led by Time Safari for your use. It floats 6 inches above the earth, doesn't touch so much as one grass blade, flower, or tree. It's an anti-gravity metal. Its purpose is to keep you from touching this world of the past in any way. Stay on the path, don't go off of it. I repeat, don't go off, for any reason. If you fall off, there's a penalty, and don't shoot any animal we don't okay. Why? Asked Eccles. They sat in the ancient wilderness. Far birds cries blew on a wind, and the smell of tar and old salt sea, moist grasses, and flowers the color of blood. We don't want to change the future. We don't belong here in the past. The government doesn't like us here. We have to pay big graft to keep our franchise. A time machine is finicky business. Not knowing it, we might kill an important animal, a small bird, a roach, a flower even, thus destroying an important link in a growing species. That's not clear, said Eccles. All right, Travis continued. Say we accidentally kill 1 mouse here. That means all the future families of this one particular mouse are destroyed, right? Right. And all the families of the families of the families of that one mouse. With a stamp of your foot, you annihilate first 1, then a dozen, then 1,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000,000 possible mice. So they're dead, said Eccles. So what? So what? Travis snorted quietly. Well, what about the foxes that'll need those mice to survive? For want of 10 mice, a fox dies. For want of 10 foxes, a lion starves. For want of a lion, all matter of insects, vultures, infinite billions of life forms are thrown into chaos and destruction. Eventually, it all boils down to this. 59 million years later, a caveman, one of a dozen on the entire world, goes hunting wild boar or saber-toothed tiger for food. But you, friend, have stepped on all the tigers in that region by stepping on 1 single mouse. So the caveman starves. And the caveman, please note, is not just any expendable man, no. He is an entire nation. From his loins would have sprung 10 sons, from their loins 100 sons, and thus onward to a civilization. Destroy this one man and you destroy a race, a people, an entire history of life. It is comparable to slaying some of Adam's grandchildren. The stomp of your foot on 1 mouse could start an earthquake, the effects of which could shake our earth and destinies down throughout time to their very foundations. With the death of that one caveman, 1 billion others yet unborn are throttled in the womb. Perhaps Rome never rises on its 7 hills. Perhaps Europe is forever a dark forest, and only Asia waxes healthy and teeming. Step on a mouse and you crush the pyramids. Step on a mouse and you leave your print like a Grand Canyon across eternity. Queen Elizabeth might never be born. Washington might not cross the Delaware. And there might never be a United States at all. So be careful. Stay on the path. Never step off. Wow, that was like... Travis kind of went hard there. That's... Yeah, no, that really does encapsulate the butterfly effect. Eccles has no concept of the butterfly effect. Just him being there makes me anxious. Honestly, same. He does not seem like somebody who really grasps how big of a deal and like how scary and risky this is. I see, said Eccles. Then it wouldn't pay for us even to touch the grass. Exhibit A of why Eccles is kind of sketchy. Correct. Crushing certain plants could add up infinitesimally. A little error here would multiply in 60 million years, all out of proportion. Of course, maybe our theory is wrong. Maybe time can't be changed by us. Or maybe it can be changed only in little subtle ways. A dead mouse here makes an insect imbalance there, a population disproportion later, a bad harvest further on, a depression, mass starvation, and finally a change in social temperament in far-flung countries. Something much more subtle like that. perhaps only a short breath, a soft breath, a whisper, a hair, pollen on the air, such a slight change that unless you looked close, you wouldn't even be able to see it. Who knows? Who really can say he knows? We don't know. We're guessing. But until we do know for certain whether our messing around in time can make a big roar or a little rustle in history, we're being careful. This machine, this path, your clothing and bodies were sterilized, as you know, before the journey. We wear these oxygen helmets so we cannot introduce bacteria into an ancient atmosphere. So they're really careful. How do we know which animals to shoot? They're marked with red paint, said Travis. Today before our journey, we sent Lesperance here back with the machine. He came to this particular era and followed certain animals. Studying them? Right, said Lesperance. I tracked them through their entire existence, noting which of them lives longest. Very few. How many times they mate? Not often. Life's short. When I find one that's going to die when a tree falls on him, or one that drowns in a tar pit, I note the exact hour, minute, and second. I shoot a paint bomb. It leaves a red patch on his side. We cannot miss it. Then I correlate our revival in the past, so that we meet the monster not more than 2 minutes before he would have died anyways. This way, we kill only animals with no future, that are never going to mate again. You see how careful we are. Yeah, no, they are really careful. But if you come back this morning in time, said Eccles eagerly, you must have bumped into us, our safari. How did it turn out? Was it successful? Did all of us get through alive? Travis and Lesfrin gave each other a look. That'd be a paradox, said the latter. Time doesn't permit that sort of mess, a man meeting himself. When such occasions threaten, time steps aside, like an airplane hitting an air pocket. Oh, so that's sort of how they handle these paradoxes here. You felt the machine jump just before we stopped? That was us passing ourselves on the way back to the future. We saw nothing. There was no way of telling if this expedition was a success, if we got our monster, or whether all of us, meaning you, Mr. Eccles, got out alive. Eccles smiled palely. Cut that, said Travis sharply, everyone on his feet. They were ready to leave the machine. The jungle was high, and the jungle was broad, and the jungle was the entire world forever and forever. Sounds like music and sounds like flying tents filled the sky, and those were pterodactyls soaring with cavernous gray wings, gigantic bats of delirium and night fever. Eccles, balanced on the narrow path, aimed his rifle playfully. Stop that, said Travis. Don't even aim for fun, blast you, if your guns should go off. Eccles flushed. Where's our Tyrannosaurus? Eccles is so dumb. Lesperance checked his wristwatch. Up ahead, we'll bisect his trail in 60 seconds. Look for the red paint. Don't shoot till we give the word. Stay on the path. Stay on the path. They moved forward in the wind of morning. Strange, murmured Eccles. Up ahead 60 million years, election date over. Keith made president. Everyone's celebrating. And here we are, a million years lost, and they don't exist. The things we worried about for months, a lifetime not even born or thought of yet. Safety catches off, everyone, ordered Travis. You, first shot Eccles, second Billings, third Kramer. I've hunted tiger, wild boar, buffalo, elephant, but now this is it, said Eccles. I'm shaking like a kid. Ah, said Travis. Everyone stopped. Travis raised his hand. Ahead, he whispered. In the mist, there he is. There's his royal majesty now. The jungle was wide and full of twitterings, rustlings, murmurs, and sighs. Suddenly, it all ceased, as if someone had shut a door. Silence. A sound of thunder. Out of the mist, 100 yards away, came Tyrannosaurus Rex. It, whispered Eccles. It. Shh. I came on great oiled resilient striding legs. It came on great oiled resilient striding legs. It towered 30 feet above half the trees, a great evil god folding its delicate watchmaker's claws close to its oily reptilian chest. Each lower leg was a piston, 1,000 pounds of white bone, sunk in thick ropes of muscle, sheathed over in a gleam of pebbled skin like the mail of a terrible warrior. Each thigh was a ton of meat, ivory, and steel mesh, and from the great breathing cage of the upper body, those two delicate arms dangled out front, arms with hands which might pick up and examine men like toys, while the snake neck coiled. And the head itself, a ton of sculptured stone, lifted easily upon the sky. Its mouth gaped, exposing a fence of teeth like daggers. Its eyes rolled, ostrich eggs, empty of all expression save hunger. It closed its mouth in a death grin. It ran, its pelvic bones crushing aside trees and bushes, its taloned feet clawing deep damp earth. Oh my god. Leaving prints 6 inches deep whenever it settled its weight. Oh, maybe I need some water. I'm very invested. Okay, let's keep going. Oh my god. It ran with a gliding ballet step, far too poised and balanced for its 10 tons. It moved into a sunlit area warily, its beautifully reptilian hands feeling the air. Why? Eccles twitched his mouth. It could reach up and grab the moon. Shh, Travis jerked angrily. He hasn't seen us yet. It can't be killed, Eccles pronounced his verdict quietly, as if there could be no agreement. He had weighed the evidence, and this was his considered opinion. The rifle in his hand seemed a cap gun. We were fools to come. This is impossible. Shut up, hissed Travis. Nightmare. Turn around, commanded Travis. Walk quietly to the machine. We'll remit half your fee. I didn't realize it would be this big, said Eccles. I miscalculated, that's all, and now I want us. It sees us. There's the red paint on its chest. The tyrant lizard raised itself. Its armored flesh glittered like 1,000 green coins. The coins, crusted with slime, steamed. In the slime, tiny insects wriggled so that the entire body seemed to twitch and undulate, even when the monster itself didn't move. It exhaled. The stink of raw flesh blew down the wilderness. Get me out of here, said Eccles. It was never like this before. I was always sure I'd come through alive. I had good guides, good safaris, and safety. This time I figured wrong. I've met my match in a minute. This is too much for me to get hold of. Don't run, said Lesperance. Turn around, hide in the machine. Yes. Eccles seemed to be numb. He looked at his feet as if trying to make them move. He gave a grunt of helplessness. Eccles! He took a few steps, blinking, shuffling. Not that way. The monster at the first motion lunged forward with a terrible scream. It covered 100 yards in 6 seconds. The rifles jerked up and blazed fire. A windstorm from the beast's mouth engulfed them in the stench of slime and old blood. The monster roared, teeth glittering with the sun. The rifles cracked again. Their sound was lost in shriek and lizard thunder. The great level of the reptile's tail swung up, lashed sideways. Trees exploded in clouds of leaf and branch. The monster twitched its jeweler's hands down to fondle at the men, to twist them in half, to crush them like berries, to cram them into its teeth and its screaming throat. Its boulder-stone eyes leveled with the men. They saw themselves mirrored. They fired at the metallic eyelids and the blazing black iris. Like a stone idol, like a mountain avalanche, Tyrannosaurus fell. Oh, thank God, at least the dinosaur's gone. Thundering, it clutched trees, pulled them with it. It wrenched and tore the metal path. The men flung themselves back and away. The body hit 10 tons of cold flesh and stone. Guns fired. The monster lashed its armored tail, twitched its snake jaws, and lay still. A fount of blood spurted from its throat. Somewhere inside, a sack of fluids burst. Sickening gushes drenched the hunters. They stood there, red and glistening. The thunder faded. The jungle was silent. After the avalanche, a green peace. After the nightmare, morning. Billings and Kramer sat on the pathway and threw up. Travis and Lesperance stood with smoking rifles, cursing steadily. In the time machine, on his face, Eccles lay shivering. He had found his way back to the path, climbed into the machine. Travis came walking, glanced at Eccles, took cotton gauze from a metal box, and returned to the others who were sitting on the path. Clean up. They wiped the blood from their helmets. They began to curse too. The monster lay a hill of solid flesh. Within you could hear the sighs and murmurs as the furthest chambers of it died, the organs malfunctioning, liquids running a final instant from pocket to sac to spleen, everything shutting off, closing up forever. It was like standing by a wrecked locomotive or a steam shovel at a quitting time, all valves being released or levered tight, bones cracked, the tonnage of its own flesh, off balance dead weight, snapped the delicate forearms caught underneath. The meat settled quivering. Another cracking sound. Overhead, a giant tree branch broke from its heavy mooring, fell. It crashed upon the dead beast with finality. There, Lesperance checked his watch. Right on time. That's the giant tree that was scheduled to fall and kill this animal originally. He glanced at the 2 hunters. You want the trophy picture? What? We can't take the trophy back to the future. The body has to stay right here where it would have died originally, so that the insects, birds, and bacteria can get at it as they were intended to. Everything in balance. The body stays. But we can take a picture of you standing near it. The men tried to think, but gave up, shaking their heads. They let themselves be led along the metal path. They sank warily into the machine cushions. They gazed back at the ruined monster, the stagnating mound, where already strange reptilian birds and golden insects were busy at the steaming armor. The sound on the floor of the time machine stiffened them. Eccles sat there shivering. "I'm sorry," he said at last. "Get up," cried Travis. Eccles got up. "Go out on that path alone," said Travis. He had his rifle pointed. "You're not coming back in the machine. We're leaving her. Oh my god." Okay, that's a little crazy. Lesperance seized Travis's arm. "Wait." "Stay out of this." Travis shook his hand away. "This fool nearly killed us, but it isn't that much so. No, it's his shoes. Look at them. He ran off the path. That ruins us. We'll forfeit thousands of dollars of insurance. We guarantee no one leaves the path. He left it. Oh, the fool. I'll have to report to the government. They might revoke our license to travel. Who knows what he's done to time, to history." "Take it easy. All he did was kick up some dirt." "How do we know?" cried Travis. "We don't know anything. It's all a mystery. Get out of here, Eccles." Eccles fumbled his shirt. "I'll pay anything. $100,000. Travis glared at Eccles' checkbook and spat. "Go out there. The monster's next to the path. Stick your arms up to your elbows in his mouth. Then you can come back with us." Okay, that's kind of unreasonable, not gonna lie. That's unreasonable. "The monster's dead, you idiot. The bullets can't be left behind. They don't belong in the past. They might change anything. Here's my knife. Dig them out." The jungle was alive again, full of the old chemmerings and bird cries. Eccles turned slowly to regard the primeval garbage dump, that hill of nightmares and terror. After a long time, like a sleepwalker, he shuffled out along the path. He returned shuddering 5 minutes later, his arms soaked and red to the elbows. He held out his hands. Each held a number of steel bullets. Then he fell. He lay where he fell, not moving. "You didn't have to make him do that," said Lesperance. "Didn't I? It's too early to tell." Travis nudged the still body. "He'll live. Next time he won't go on hunting game like this." "Okay," he jerked his thumb warily at Lesperance. "Switch on. Let's go home." Oh my god. 1492, 1776, 1812. They cleaned their hands and faces. They changed their caking shirts and pants. Eccles was up and around again, not speaking. Travis glared at him for a full 10 minutes. "Don't look at me," cried Eccles. "I haven't done anything." "Who can tell?" "Just ran off the path, that's all. A little mud on my shoes. What do you want me to do, get down and pray?" "We might need it. I'm warning you, Eccles. I might kill you yet. I've got my gun ready." "I'm innocent. I've done nothing." 1999, 2000, 2055. The machine stopped. "Get out," said Travis. The room was there as they had left it, but not the same as they had left it. The same man sat behind the same desk, but the same man did not quite sit behind the same desk. Travis looked around swiftly. "Everything okay here?" he snapped. "Fine. Welcome home." Travis did not relax. He seemed to be looking through the one high window. "Okay, Eccles, get out. Don't ever come back." Eccles could not move. "You heard me, Travis," said Travis. "What are you staring at?" Eccles stood smelling of the air, and there was a thing to the air, a chemical taint so subtle, so slight, that only a faint cry of his subliminal senses warned him it was there. The colors, white, gray, blue, orange, in the wall, in the furniture, in the sky beyond the window, were, and there was a feel. His flesh twitched, his hands twitched. He stood drinking the oddness with the pores of his body. Somewhere, someone must have been screaming one of those whistles that only a dog can hear. His body screamed silence in return. Beyond this room, beyond this wall, beyond this man who was not quite the same man seated at the desk that was not quite the same desk, lay an entire world of streets and people. What sort of world it was now, there was no telling. He could feel them moving there, beyond the walls almost, like many chess pieces blown in a dry wind. But the immediate thing was a sign painted on the office wall. The same sign he had read earlier today on first entering. Somehow the sign had changed. Time Safari Inc. Safaris to any year in the past. You name the animal, we take you there, you shoot it. Eccles felt himself fall into a chair. He fumbled crazily at the thick slime on his boots. He held up a clod of dirt, trembling. "No, it can't be. Not a little thing like that. No." Embedded in the mud, glistening green and gold and black, was a butterfly. Very beautiful and very dead. "Not a little thing like that. Not a butterfly," cried Eccles. It fell to the floor, an exquisite thing, a small thing that could upset balances and knock down a line of small dominoes, and then big dominoes, and then gigantic dominoes, all down the years across time. Eccles' mind whirled. It couldn't change things. Killing one butterfly couldn't be that important, could it? His face was cold. His mouth trembled, asking, Who won the presidential election yesterday? The man behind the desk laughed. You're joking? You know very well. Do a show, of course. Ruh-roh! Who else? Not that fool weakling Keith. We got an Iron Man now, a man with guts. The official stopped. What's wrong? Eccles moaned. He dropped to his knees. He scrabbled at the golden butterfly with shaking fingers. Can't we? He pleaded to the world, to himself, to the officials, to the machine. Can't we take it back? Can't we make it alive again? Can't we start over? Can't we? He did not move. Eyes shut, he waited shivering. He heard Travis breathe loud in the room. He heard Travis shift his rifle, click the safety catch, and raise the weapon. There was a sound of thunder. Oh no. Oh no. Another spooky tale. Yeah, no, this is like... This is why you shouldn't be hunting dinosaurs. But no, I really like this one because it's really like, it makes you think about like cause and effect. Also, Time Machine is cool, but thinking about like the consequences of a time machine that's just beyond like paradoxes and causality and stuff. Lamau, yeah, no. Eccles more like L's because he took an L. X-Boson, a truly ageless classic. Yes, no, this is one of my favorites, for sure. I will link all of these below, by the way, so don't worry. Surprisingly small changes, all things considered, like, at least humans still exist. Yeah, no, I felt like, one of the things that they emphasized in this story was, like, the presidential guy, like, the results of the election changed by him stepping on a butterfly, but I think the atmosphere was also slightly different from what it sounded like. But yeah, no, maybe it was because it was just a butterfly. It could have been much worse. Shizia sends the good vibes emoji. Well, now it's getting pretty late, so it might be around time I go outside and try to see some Perseids. I will also share the photo of the rocket launch that I saw earlier today. That would be super cool. How are you guys feeling? Are you guys feeling spooked? Are you guys feeling ready to go stargazing? I'm feeling a little scared, honestly. Being here in Z-Stream has irrevocably changed the course of my life. You know, it's like the butterfly effect. You know, watching this stream changes you internally. This actually brings up a lot of good questions about, like, free will. Now, I could go on like a 3-hour long. I could literally make a 3-hour long video on this. But you are sort of the consequences of like every single event. Like your personality, the way that you think, is basically the butterfly effect of every single event or person you've interacted with. So like, for example, if you're here in my stream and you have another, maybe you're talking about science fiction stories with somebody else, and even if you didn't really remember these stories, you were here on the stream, and that would affect your perception of science fiction and affect that conversation you would have with another individual. Now, this can be expanded to a lot of things, right? Like maybe when you were 3 years old, you were terrified by aliens, and maybe you've grown from that, but yeah, you're a victim of circumstance. That one event in your distant past has totally affected who you are today. Or maybe an interaction that you've had with somebody is a result of an interaction with somebody else. So the real question is, do we really have free will? Or are we just guided by all of the consequences or circumstances that life has brought us? That is a really interesting question. Because maybe we're not making decisions. Maybe if you want to decide, like, do I want to eat a pizza or a hamburger today? Maybe that decision isn't you having free will, but rather the culmination of every single conversation or memory or experience that you've had in the past, culminating to this one decision. And if you had a computer that was coded enough sufficiently, maybe you could code in it all of these experiences. And maybe if you had a detailed enough computer, it could predict your decision based off of all the experiences you have went through in the past. I don't know. What do you guys think of that? Too deep? Or imagine being terrified. That's a really creative nickname. Yeah, no, this is crazy stuff. Let me close this. Free will is a very crazy topic. Yep. Yeah, no, it's definitely really funky to think about. Yeah. Well, this was it for the stream, and now I will go outside and stargaze and drink some tea, because that was a lot of reading. I'll be sure to link all the sci-fi stuff below, and yeah, for those of you guys who may not know, this is my last week of live streaming, so I really wanted to make the most of it. Which means that my next stream will be on Tuesday, which will be learning some machine learning, which will be super duper cool. I've also been working on setting up our Discord, so I'm very, very excited. They're giving away this will for free? Okay, you can interpret it like that. Laplace's demon? Ooh. Laplace's demon. Determine that pass completely. Yeah, no, it's like this idea, basically. This was fun. Yeah, no, I hope you guys had fun. This was really fun for me, too, and I'm really glad I was able to share some of my favorite short stories with you guys. Alright, well, I think I'm gonna call it a day, but I shall see you guys on Tuesday. I also have a presentation I have to do tomorrow, so I'm feeling a little bit nervous. Oh, no, this will not be my last week ever, don't worry. It'll just mean that, I'm basically traveling for the next month or so. Not month, next few weeks. And basically, I won't be able to live stream, but I will be able to post all of the explainer videos I've been working on so far. I'm doing like sort of a final like goodbye stream on Friday, and so you guys should come, and there is a little bit of a surprise for you guys that I'm so excited to share, and I think you guys will really like it. Alright, well, I think that's all for me today. Hope everybody's having a good night, or if you're in a different time zone, like good morning or good afternoon. But until then, I shall see you guys later. Okay, guys. Have a good night. Oh, thank you for the presentation. Good luck messages. Alright. Goodbye, everybody. See you guys later. Bye.